Welcome everyone, this is your host Abraham L. Jaguar, a professional game master. First of all, this channel is proudly sponsored by D3 Studios, the publishers and developers of Dames of Asstoria, a tabletop role-playing game where you play as monster girls, experiencing high adventure in a world that doesn't fully accept them. They have recently released Daughters of Lamb. This is a pay what you want tabletop RPG, where you get to play as cybernetic nuns with guns, looking for the missing pieces of their AI god. You will find it in the website. The link will be in the description and in the pinned comment. This channel is also proudly sponsored by the Red Room Publishing. Please check out their store for exclusive tabletop RPG products. They have recently released Savage Swords. This is a Conan-inspired tabletop RPG, where you get to explore ancient civilizations and confront forgotten nightmares. You will also find it in the description and in the pinned comment. Check it out. Tonight, I am reviewing very interesting GMless tabletop RPG. It is a Souls-like game, very different from others because this one actually tries to present a sort of grid spacing situation where the tactics, the strategies are related to the position of the enemies and the player characters. But at the same time, there is also some randomness and many unexpected results, all driven by playing cards. You only need a normal deck of playing cards to play this GMless adventure game for 1 to 4 players. It is called, as you can see on screen, Brightborne. Now, let's talk about the quality of the PDF. The quality is great. What you see before on the screen before you is the character sheet. Very simple to understand. You have your skills, your inventory, your HP. HP and vigor is handled differently. Inspired obviously by Dark Souls, Demon Souls, etc., Elden Ring, and you have your details such as your name, your class, and your combat arts. Everything is well written, organized, and explained. The illustrations, there aren't too many, only two of them. I will show them to you in a few moments. In black and white, the graphic design is quite minimalistic, just minor embellishments here and there, and yellowish, like parchment colored background. So overall, the quality is really good. Now let's talk about the contents. We start with this image because this image is really cool and represents the myth of the conflict. The gods in this world, they dissolve when it is time for them to die. As we would understand it in human terms, they dissolve into a never-ending dream. And they had this brilliant idea. Instead of having a chance of experiencing nightmares, how about we create a guardian that keeps us in pleasant dreams for all eternity? And so this guardian by the name of Hypnos was created. Hypnos, well, he became a sort of gardener and caretaker of the dreams of the gods. But he started to get a bit bored. Imagine, this is your job. You are not a creator. You're just a guy that is making sure that the gods do not experience nightmares. So he started to create things of his own, using the dream stuff of the gods as building material, as clay. But he was not a god, so things got really out of hand really fast, and a lot of monstrous creations started to appear, and other beings that were not so monstrous. So a new universe, a new dreamlike universe was created. Sadly, the dream beings that were not hostile, they started to suffer the horrors, the violence enacted upon them by the darker dream entities. The most powerful ones being these nightmare lords that poison the entire dreamscape. Luckily for the dream inhabitants, the knights of King Arthur, knights of the Round Table, some of them accidentally found their way into these dreamlands. They were questing for the Holy Grail, and Sir Percival and others ended up in this dream dimension of sorts. They got to know the fairer beings of this dream world, and so beings that are half dream, half human were born. And you are role playing as those beings. You are the bright blood. You are the only ones with the power to drive back the Nightmare Lords. Apparently, some sort of quality from the human blood, when mixed with the dream blood, created these powerful warriors, but still very vulnerable to the dangers of this dreamscape. Now, let's talk about the mechanical side of things. In this GMless game, of course, you don't need a game master. You only need 1 to 4 players. A copy of your character sheet, of course, this rulebook, pencil, eraser, or apps if you prefer, and a standard deck of blackjack cards, standard poker deck. You divide this deck into 2 piles. One made up of number cards, the fate deck, and the other of face cards, the enemy deck. You set aside the aces and jokers. You shuffle both piles and place them face down on the table. The character creation process is quite simple. You distribute a number of values among your skills. You choose one archetype from the archetype table, add its skill bonus, note the weapon in your inventory, and the combat arts in your details. You draw fate cards for 3 mundane items and record them in your inventory. You choose a name for your character and a class. And you can add some descriptive details as well if you like. The skills are Spark, Grit, Insight, and Veil. They are broad categories. For example, Spark is all about persuasion, kindness. Could be considered a bit like charisma. Grit is all about physical strength and endurance. Insight is about perception, knowledge. Veil is about stealth, discretion, deceit. And what about the gameplay loop? Once your character sheets are filled out, you need to create the encounter deck. This deck determines the events you'll face during your hunt. You take the joker you set aside earlier and shuffle it into the bottom 3 cards because this represents the Nightmare Lord, the goal of the hunt. Now the game can begin with the exploration turn. At the start of the game, you decide who will be the lead player. This person becomes the main focus for the current exploration turn. The lead player takes charge of the skill checks and makes key decisions for the group during their turn. Of course, they can and should ask for the opinions of others. I would recommend in character, but their word is final. Once the lead player is chosen, you follow a loop until the Joker card is drawn. The player to the right of the lead player becomes the narrator and draws the top card from the encounter deck. Using the location table, that player reads the entry that matches the drawn card. This is the location card. Then you draw another card from the fate deck to add a risky situation to the encounter, comparing it to the risk table. This is the risk card. Once the encounter is set, the lead player makes decisions, handles any skill checks, and guides the group through the encounter. After this, the exploration turn ends. The lead player then passes the role of the lead player to the player on their left and becomes the narrator for that player, drawing the next encounter card and describing what unfolds. Rather, the narrator for the entire group if you have 3 or 4 participants. This loop continues until you draw the Joker card. During your journey to achieve your goal in the hunt, Each card drawn from the encounter deck reveals a new scene by combining the location and the risk, and this will make up the challenge. When you draw the Joker card, the Lord appears. Draw the top 4 cards from the enemy deck and lay them out side by side from left to right. You label these cards A to D for use with the Nightmare Lord encounter table. You read the italic text from each column in order to create the narrative description of the Lord. Then you shuffle these 4 cards and place them face down. This will be the Nightmare Lord's special attacks. During each enemy turn, you draw one of these cards to determine the ability that is being used by the enemy Lord for that turn. Whenever you successfully complete a skill check or survive a combat encounter, you may perform a search. You draw a card from the Fate deck, and based on the result, maybe it's a relic, a clue, a mundane item, or nothing. A clue is something that you can employ to have an advantage during the confrontation with the Nightmare Lord. A relic has other bonuses and special abilities. A mundane item could assist you in various checks by describing how you employ that item to be successful at a particular task. The values of each of your skills give you a greater chance of succeeding. For example, if you have 3, or rather, yes, 3 in grit, this means that you draw 3 cards, and based on the result, you could be successful at a physically related task. And if you have, let's say, only 2, you only draw 2 cards, you compare them to the needed result, and perhaps it's a success or maybe a failure. There is granularity here. There could be setbacks, there could be successes. And of course, it all depends on the context. Combat is structured in rounds, with each turn having the players and the enemies taking their actions. Players always act first in whatever order they choose. After that, the enemies take their turns. You have a simple combat grid, 4 by 3. 4 columns, 4 columns are formed by the 4 suits, that is hearts, spades, etc. And the 3 rows are represented by the queen, the king, and the jack. Based on those positions, that marks the space where the player is standing at. Maybe you are in the heart row, the heart column in the queen row. Or maybe you are in the spades column in the king row. Each row grants you a bonus. For example, the jack represents the relentless stance. It gives you a bonus to your attack check. That is a bonus card to be drawn, but you get no dodge bonus. While the king is the defensive stance. You get a -1 to your attack check, even reducing your stat to 0 perhaps. But you get a bonus to dodge. The player carries out his or her attack. You can only attack the row in front of you unless you use some sort of special ability to affect other rows. You can also move to change your position on the grid. You can use your combat arts. And during the enemy turns, they actually feel like Dark Souls or Demon Souls attacks. They could attack various areas at the same time, and it's all about your position. So there is certainly an element of luck, but you have to use your skills, your powers, your abilities to see if you manage to inflict as much damage as possible while protecting yourself. Now, how do hit points, or rather in this game they're called hit protection points, work? If you fail to escape your enemy's attack, these hit protection points are reduced. When all of your hit protection points are gone, you take damage to your vigor. And if all of your vigor is gone, then that's it. You are gone. It is your end. Now, the game master portion of this game also plays out into combat. If you defeat an enemy or perhaps even a lord, you get to describe how the defeat occurs, how you do the sort of like a finishing move, perhaps. Now, what about dodge? This is used when you take damage. It reduces the damage you suffer by the same amount. So you have three layers: dodge, and then if that is not enough, you take damage to your hit protection, and after that to your vigor. You can also recover health, of course, but you are still very fragile. There could be some ways to protect yourself from damage, but this is all very abstract. It's not like you have a plethora of healing spells like in Dungeons and Dragons. This is all about the hit protection and the dodge, the bigger representing you rolling and dodging and shielding yourself from the enemy's attacks. There are also conditions: crippled, traumatized, weakened, and disgraced. At the start of each player's turn, any character, including enemies, take one direct damage for each condition they have. You cannot have the same condition more than once. If you receive a condition you already have, you instead suffer 3 damage. These conditions could be applied to your character because of failed checks in various tasks. Now, when it comes to rest, after combat, you can choose to rest instead of performing a search. Resting removes all conditions and restore your hit protection points to maximum. And this is pretty much it. This concludes my review of Brightborne. What do I think about it? Let's point out potential negatives. I don't think it's a good idea to play this game a lot, because although you have a lot of results, like let me read some of them to you. You see a sunken crypt split wide open with broken urns and dusty relics spilling into the hallway. You can check it. And when it comes to risks, but beware, the air grows thick with spores and something stirs inside the moss. So you can come up with your interpretations as the lead player, the narrator. But eventually you will run out of results and things will start to feel a bit repetitive. So don't play this like 2 or 3 times a week. Play it once a week, or I would recommend playing it once every 2 weeks or once a month to keep the magic alive. I also think this is better for shorter campaigns. And you can have your campaigns as long as possible. There is a level up system where you start to obtain archetypes. But definitely, like I said, the major consideration for this GMless role-playing game for 1 to 4 players is that it is not that big. So play it every now and then, somewhat casually. But everything else is amazing. The representation of the battlefield of Dark Souls, rolling and jumping back and blocking, and typical Dark Souls-like combat. It is represented here, although there is um, randomness because of the result of the cards that are being drawn. The intelligent use of your resources, your combat arts, could swing the pendulum in your favor. But it's still 50% skill, 50% luck, I would say, because of the results. This is also for players that are already knowledgeable in roleplay. You can play this as a normal game, but I think this game truly shines when you actually roleplay, when you handle things in character. That's why I say don't stop the game and start to have a conversation about the results. That's going to kill the immersion. Have the lead narrator describe the the results, come up with his or her interpretation of the results. I also think that this game could potentially be better if you had a single narrator for an entire session, and then the next session another narrator. But who knows? These are just like my thoughts, my considerations on things. Maybe a mixed session, that is mixed interpretation of the results, could be interesting. That's the I cannot call it in another way, interesting or surprising. But if I were to run this, I would have a single narrator for the entire session. If only one of the players or the participants owns the game, then that should be the narrator. But I think you will enjoy the many random results of the places, risks that you will encounter, the enemies, the description of the nightmare lords, the things that you find, mundane items or something a bit more valuable, the advancement represented by obtaining the archetypes. So my highest recommendation, definitely get Brightborne and check out you will find the link in the description of this video. Check out the other games by the author Peter Schultz. He has Entity and, as I understand it, a few other games, and I really enjoyed playing Entity. In fact, I need to continue that solo campaign. So, Brightborn, I think you will love it. Thank you for watching this review. Don't forget to leave a like, comment, and subscribe. And thank you so much to those of you that are going the extra mile to support the channel. If anyone else wishes to further support the channel, consider joining as a member using the Super Thanks button. Take a look at the information in the description, the pinned comment. This has been your host, Abraham L. Jaguar, a professional game master. And remember, it is better to roleplay and fail in character than not to roleplay and fail as a player. Once again, thank you and see you later.